Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 81 of the All Dolphins podcast. And today, got to go with two local media members.
Hold on, wait a minute. OJ McDuffie, damn it.
And OJ McDuffie, absolutely among the best set of hands any Dolphin wide receiver had. Dude has mitts. Jarvis Landry and Aranda Gadsden also belong in the conversation from where I sit, but OJ absolutely has to be in the discussion. The other one played before your time, but you should know him because he's the current and longtime radio play-by-play voice, Jimmy Cephalo.
Oh, okay. I know him as just a broadcaster.
Okay, well, no, he played wide receiver out of Penn State, had a long touchdown in the Super Bowl against the Washington Redskins, now just Washington. At the end of the 1992 season, I believe it was 76 yards in a 27-17 loss against Washington.
OJ is special for me because one, he's a cool dude. Two, he was on the team when I really started covering the team back when I was an intern. And also that he was the kind of the first draft pick that I kind of paid attention to back in the early days. And the one thing that I can tell you about OJ is he's got the biggest set of hands I've ever seen. They're like catcher's mitts in terms of how large they are.
Yeah, it might explain why he had such good hands and then caught everything thrown anywhere near him. And it was the same thing with Aranda Gadsden, who's got like gargantuan hands. 1993.
Aranda, his son, who's a star tight end at Syracuse, he just suffered a Liz Frank injury and is done for the season. So, Aranda's got that next generation coming up that pipeline, and unfortunately, he's down for the season.
That sucks. You may have noticed a gentleman popping up at the bottom of the screen. If you didn't, might have one to get your eyes checked, because it was pretty obvious. Good friend Benjamin Albright from radio station KOA in Denver, Broncos Insider, is a dude that when I have Denver Dolphin-related questions as it pertains to the Broncos, I hit him up. And man, do we have a lot of Dolphin-related questions when it comes to the Broncos. Ben, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I apologize for any ambient noise. I've got a shower that's getting worked on right now, so I apologize for any ambient noise.
All good. And that actually don't even hear it. Let me start with 0-2, Broncos 0-2, the sky falling in Denver. Sean Payton was supposed to be the answer to everything, wasn't he not?
Yeah, I mean, that was the reason that they traded the draft picks and paid him all that money, right? He was going to be the wonderkind who came in here and turned things around. To be fair, the offense has looked better, and we're at least getting plays in on time now, which is a startling 180 from last year when the fans had to count down the play clock in order to get the snap off. But, it still hasn't resulted in wins against two teams I think that we would all agree are what you would consider winnable games, in the Raiders and the Washington Commanders. The Broncos have lost both those games by a combined 3 points, so that's certainly something to take a look at. But in reality, I mean, only scoring 16 points in your first game and then not scoring for almost at all, except on the Hail Mary there in the second half of the game against the Commanders, certainly raises some red flags.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned, hold on a second, Omar. It's funny you mentioned that Sean Payton cost the Broncos a first-round pick, because he kind of sort of cost the Dolphins a first-round pick as well.
Kind of, sort of? Or did?
Well, Omar, I think we know that maybe perhaps, even though it wasn't said, the tanking allegations had something to do with it.
Okay. In fairness, Sean Payton, you're right. Sean Payton did not cost the Dolphins. They were being penalized for the Brian Flores tanking fiasco, which clearly the NFL can acknowledge, but should punish.
So, yeah. Oh, and they tampered also with Tom Brady. So, has the Sean Payton courtship with the Dolphins ever come up in Denver country, or once they hired him, it was like, we don't care about the Dolphins or even that chapter at all?
Yeah, not really. And to be honest with you, a lot of Sean Payton's past hasn't come up here. It's been interesting because during the process, I tried to lay some of that out, and the fan base here just does not want to hear it. They don't want to hear about Bountygate. They don't want to hear about the pill scandal. They want to hear about moving training camp to West Virginia to be with the mistress. They don't want to hear about leaving your team high and dry after Drew Brees retires because you want to retire, and then coming back a year later to go somewhere else instead of going back to your old team. There's quite a few things that people don't want to really have, I think, honest conversations about. I think Sean Payton's a good coach. I do. I don't think he's a great coach. I think he's a good coach. I mean, you had a top 5 quarterback all time in Drew Brees, and you got one Super Bowl out of it. To me, that's your resume is on par with Mike McCarthy, and I think he knows that. Now, Were there opportunities that were maybe a bit beyond his control? The Nicole Roby Coleman call that probably they should have gone to a Super Bowl and had a shot? Sure, absolutely. But I think that Sean Payton came back to coaching for legacy, and that's why he's here. And all of a sudden, we're seeing that maybe this is going to be a little bit harder than he thought.
Well, I mean, who didn't think it was going to be hard? He's dealing with one of probably the hardest, biggest, most reclamation projects in Russell Wilson. I happen to be a Russell Wilson fan, but I cannot ignore the fact that he's fallen off the side of a wagon and does not look like the same player. Now, statistically, he's doing pretty good, but that Hail Mary probably contributed to it last week. Where is Russell Wilson in terms of understanding Sean Payton's offense, comfort level, and execution?
It's a good point. The Hail Mary did pad the stats. Look, Russ is somewhere between where he was in 2020 and where he was last year, somewhere in the middle of that. Like any good debate, the truth is somewhere in the middle. His, hers, and the truth, right? I think that he looks a lot more comfortable than he did last year with Nathaniel Hackett. I still think there are times where he's uncomfortable. And one of the things about Russell Wilson that goes unsaid is how much time he spends at the line looking at everything before he gets a snap off, and then how much time he spends with the ball in his hands, looking at everything before he gets the ball out or gets sacked. And so I think those are the things. Russell Wilson has always been able to overcome that because of the great athleticism and the huge arm and the deep bucket throws that are beautiful. But as the athleticism and Father Time has taken control, we're seeing less of that, and he wanted to reinvent himself as Drew Brees. And then last year they tried to do that, and Russell Wilson is not Drew Brees. Russ's strengths are putting the ball deep or on the outside. Doesn't like to throw between the numbers. Drew Brees loved the in-breaking stuff. He loved the slant. And so I think that's part of the problem is that Russ had to acknowledge that what he is not the same thing. And I talked about Sean Payton and legacy. Russ knows he's playing for legacy. Russ is one of those people who has that. We'll call it confidence. Some would call it arrogance. That he believes that he's one of the best of all time, and he needs to put that down on paper in order to be considered in that conversation and put in the Hall of Fame. So, I think you've got two guys with a lot of ego, and that can be a good thing because they both know what their goal is. But it can also be a bad thing when things go south because everybody's looking to throw somebody under the bus. And I think anybody familiar with Sean Payton knows that Sean Payton is never the problem, according to Sean Payton.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question because I'm of the opinion that Russell, what he had done in Seattle is Hall of Fame worthy. I will make the argument that he's the best quarterback in that 2012 draft. Do you think Sean...
It's not Ryan Tannehill? Sorry.
Look, I love Ryan Tannehill too, by the way, but you're right.
No,
nobody here loves Ryan Tannehill.
Here. We like him as a guy, but...
Inside joke. Could Russ tarnish his legacy Hall of Fame career if this Denver goes south?
I guess, if the wheels really come off and it goes back to being as bad as last year, I think if he continues statistically on the pace he's at now, I think it's cemented because I think that the Seattle stuff was enough. I think, getting to 2 Super Bowls, winning one, I think that's enough. I would call him a borderline Hall of Famer right now, who probably just needs to put one more deep playoff run on the resume to like cement it. But some of these other people that are going to get in the Hall of Fame in the next few years are guys that don't have the same resume. Phil Rivers has better numbers, but he's going to get the Hall. Phil didn't have a Super Bowl; he can sniff one.
Yeah. Eli's going to get in the Hall. He's got 2 championships and a 500 record.
Right. And then Roethlisberger is going to get it. That's the thing. So I think if you look at the body of work, I think Russell Wilson makes the Hall of Fame. I think when the stench of last season dissipates enough, everybody will look back and remember Russ for the good things and not for whatever the bleep that was last year.
Okay.
Now, hold
on, Omar, we need to move on from Russell Wilson. We don't want to spend...
No, I want to know, last year and the issues that Denver had, was it coaching or was it talent?
Make it quick, Ben. Yeah. I want to move on to other topics. Omar, we're spending too much time on Russell Wilson. Go ahead, Ben.
The answer is yes. The answer is yes, it's both. It was a combination. The offensive line was terrible. The coaching was atrocious. You got one of our offensive line coaches who is reviled here in Denver, in Butch Barry. But it wasn't just Butch Barry. It was across the board. The special teams coordinator was in over his head, and it was just a bad situation all the way around, where the wrong people had too much power, the talent level wasn't there, and the coaching was not prepared for it.
Okay, we're on a time limit here. That's why we have a lot of topics to get to. I don't want to run out of time because we're spending all this time on Russell Wilson.
But he brought up Butch Barry now.
Correct, and that's where I'm going to go. Who will make the Hall of Fame, by the way? Okay, Butch Barry, from everything we've observed so far, is doing a very, very good job here in Miami, which goes 180 to what you're saying. So, what was the problem in Denver?
The problem in Denver is he didn't coach. He would throw up tape and point out mistakes and say, "Okay, fix that," and then not do anything. He would leave notes in people's lockers instead of addressing them directly. And you know, I have impeccable sourcing on this stuff, and so it's. I will tell you, they were relieved when he was immediately fired. Like when they fired Hackett and you know, the interim coach took over, and Jerry Rossberg, he fired Butch Barry on the spot because of some of that stuff. Now, it is my hope that Butch Barry has recognized this, learned from it, and turned it around down there in Miami, and is actually, you know, doing a lot better. And from all reports, given what Miami's doing, that seems to be the case. So I never have ill will for somebody as far as that goes, but I do have to report the facts.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I know his tenure here at University of Miami, which was bad. Then I hear what happened in Denver, which was clearly a train wreck. And now I came into this situation extremely critical of him and his work. And I got to tell you, maybe he grew up, changed, you know, evolved, but his work has been phenomenal here so far. And you know, I got to say, you know, hopefully this is the tenure that helps him clean up his resume.
Yeah, I'll say this. As a man who has made many mistakes in my own life, every moment is a chance to turn it all around.
No, and we in fairness, also the pass protection has helped. And Omar, get ready for this. The pass protection is greatly helped by the fact that Tua makes quick decisions and gets the ball out very quickly.
Look at Poupart praising Tua.
And which I
don't forget the pocket presence. You didn't say the pocket presence.
It's got nothing to do with getting the ball out quickly. Sorry, Ben.
I said that's the strength of Tua's game, though. Like the disbelief in Tua doesn't come from, you know, the decision making and that kind of stuff. The disbelief in him comes from the lack of velocity on the deep ball and his health. Can he stay healthy?
And it's which is basically what I've said all along. Or making plays off schedule, which actually he's already done a better job of that so far in 2022. But Omar and a large portion of Dolphin fans think I hate everything related to Tua, which is complete garbage. Anyway, another connection. Vic Fangio, brilliant defensive mind wherever he's been. His tenure as a head coach with the Broncos, not so much. I guess, how would you describe Fangio's tenure as Broncos head coach? What were the issues, if any?
Well, I think you nailed it right there. And I think that the issues were he never got the right offensive coordinator, never got the right quarterback. Those were the issues with Vic's tenure. I mean, you look at the quarterbacks they had, and then Punt Shermer came in, and brought Teddy Bridgewater, Teddy 2 yards with him. And Teddy Bridgewater set
we call him Teddy 2 gloves, but okay, Teddy 2 yards.
Well, I mean, it was embarrassing to watch. Drew Lock beat him out in camp. I mean, spanked him in camp, and they still went with Teddy. And then it was funny to watch because, you know, the first couple of games they had some soft opponents and got some wins, and then all of a sudden you saw Teddy become Teddy, and that is whenever it's third down and it's 6+, Teddy will get you 2 yards. He actually set a record for futility that year in not converting third downs while completing passes. That's
the joke. There was a former coach, I don't know if it was Bum Phillips, who was talking about a running back. If you need 3 yards, I'll get you 3 yards. If you need 6 yards, I'll get you 3 yards.
Right. That was the thing. I think Leroy Horde brought that quote back up a few years later when he was in Minnesota. You know, he's like, yeah, you need 2 yards, coach, I'll get you 3. You need 4 yards, I'll get you 3. But as far as Vic goes, by the way, I love Vic Fangio. I mean, I do. His scheme is what everybody's kind of switched to now. It's that tight front, you know, and it's quarters match on the back end or middle of the field open. You'll see some 2 deep man under and occasional zero blitzes, but mostly it's either quarters match or C6 or C2. And what he runs, everybody's kind of running. It requires that the defensive backs are able to tackle. And there are some flaws with it. It'll give up rushing yardage, and it's baiting you in first and second down to run on it. That's what they want you to do. The other flaw with it is end of game management, because it's a bend don't break defense. It struggles to generate turnovers or get quick stops. So if your opponent gets the ball with 4 minutes left, they're probably keeping it.
Well, although it's interesting because in the Chargers game, hold on, Omar, let me remember. In the Chargers game, we saw a couple of those instances. Number one, Chargers rushed for 233 yards. And it was basically because they didn't want to get beat deep. But at the end of the game, Fangio, who hadn't blitzed pretty much all game, decided to turn it up, and they got 3 sacks on the 3 of the 4 downs that the Chargers had. So I guess he adjusted on the fly there. Omar, you wanted to say?
So there's no variation based on opponent. This is just what it is, and we're not going to switch and alter and adjust.
I mean, there are some tweaks or adjustments based on your opponent here or there, but a lot of it is this is the scheme we're running. We're, with the cover 4, we're giving up the flats. We'll let you nickel and dime us, keep the play in front of you, and then the idea is just to, like I said, bend don't break. The idea is to give you the short stuff, bog you down, make you do time consuming drives, and then when you get to the red zone, clamp down and force you to a field goal or hopefully get a turnover. And that's the whole philosophy behind the defense. It's send the least amount of pressure you need to at the quarterback, drop everybody back, keep the play in front of you, and do that till you get to the red zone. And it's the opposite of like a Wade Phillips, where a Wade Phillips will send everything at the quarterback, everything he can find at the quarterback, and try to get pressure and put his DBs on an island.
Or a Brian Flores.
Right, or a Brian Flores. Yeah,
it's funny that I watch this defense, and I think that there's a marriage of the two that would really be wonderful. Unfortunately, you're making me not believe that we're going to get to that marriage.
Well, I hope that. I hope Vic, finds the balance on that. And there were games he called that were masterful. There was a game against Dallas he called that was absolutely brilliant in terms of going back and forth between the, bend, don't break, and then dialing up the 0 at the right time. But the problem is Vic's usual philosophy is we're going to play bend, don't break all game and then dial a bunch of zeros up at the end.
Well, and there was more blitzing in week 2 than there was in week 1. Right,
that's true. They did blitz early.
Right from the start. Another connection, Bradley Chubb. How would you describe his time in Denver?
I love Bradley Chubb, the person. I think Bradley Chubb, the player, never lived up to the draft slot. It was kind of interesting because the Broncos were actually never going to take him. They had a deal in place with the Bills to trade out of there because the Bills were coming up for Josh Allen. And the Broncos did not think that Chubb was even going to be there. He's one of 3 players they would take. They thought the Browns were going to take him instead of the corner they took there, I believe it was Ward. And so they were never going to take Bradley Chubb. They were going to trade back. And Chubb fell in their lap, so they wound up taking him. And the promise was there. I mean, when he and Vaughn were on the field together for those limited snaps that they were on the field together, it was a beautiful thing to watch. But injuries derailed both, and ultimately, the productivity just ended up not being there in the end. I love him as a person. In our radio show, we go out on Monday nights, do the Monday Night Football remotes and all that kind of stuff. And Bradley came out one time for an hour and did that, and he was real gracious. Stood around and signed everybody's stuff for free, did all that kind of stuff. He's a good person, sharp guy, real fun to talk to, but the career just got derailed by injuries. And it looks like productivity there in Miami hadn't been there either.
Well, no, he had last year after he came in midseason, didn't do a whole lot, had some minor injuries. Week 1, Rashawn Slater completely eliminated him from the game. And then in week 2, he stepped up big time.
Okay. I haven't seen the A22 yet for that game. So I don't know, but I saw week 1's against the Chargers.
Oh yeah, no, he got disappeared.
From a defensive standpoint, I wanted to ask, from a defensive standpoint, how have they made up for the loss of Bradley? Like, is Randy Gregory really the answer there?
I mean, you traded one injured guy for another. I mean, there's not an actual trade, but you signed him, right? They drafted Baron Browning, who also has kind of gotten a fragility tag. He started off at inside, and they moved him to the outside. The people that have stepped up have really been Jonathan Cooper, who was drafted when Baron Browning was drafted, but he was drafted in the 7th round, and then Nick Bonito, a 2nd-round draft pick who's been a situational pass rusher. Those are the guys that have really stepped up, if we're being honest. Randy Gregory, the production does not match the price tag. Baron Browning has yet to hit the field this year, so that's been a problem. They also drafted Drew Sanders this year. Now, they've kept him at the inside, but they've talked about moving him outside because he's 6'4", 260 and had something like 9.5 sacks from the inside down there at Arkansas. So that's somebody I think that they could in a pinch go to, and I think he'd thrive. But right now they've used Randy Gregory and John Cooper as the starters, and Nick Bonito as a backup, and it has not been what they needed to be. Well,
they also lost Frank Clark, which didn't help.
Yeah, but Frank, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, Frank was in training camp and he was not where he needed to be. He looked, he looked, I don't want to say he looked like a shell of himself, but he definitely looked like he lost a step.
I want to ask you about.
Go ahead.
I want to ask you about Patrick Surtain II, who his dad played here, coached here last year. I know people in the league who say he's the best cornerback in the game right now. Is he shadowing, and what growth have you seen from his game this season?
He does a little shadowing. This scheme mostly keeps field and boundary corners. It doesn't really have the corner chase all the time. He just keeps getting better. He keeps getting more instinctive. I think everybody saw the Devontae Adams double move in overtime last year, and that kind of been talked up. But he shut Devontae Adams down in week one, even though the Broncos lost. He shut him down. He's very intelligent. I think that's his strength. I mean, it's not just it's not just that he's a great athlete with great size. He's incredibly intelligent. He has a very high football IQ. I've known his dad for years. When he got drafted here, that was my first thing. It's like, holy crap, we got him. The fan base here, it's interesting. The fan base here when he was drafted revolted. They were absolutely apoplectic that they did not draft Justin Fields. And now that looks so prescient on George Paton's part to have taken probably the best corner in the last 5-6 years and passed on a quarterback who has worse statistics than Jamarcus Russell at this point.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Man. Really?
Him.
Look him up. I promise you. He has 2 more starts than Jamarcus Russell and is absolutely worse in every passing category.
Well, but he ran all over the Dolphins last year. Actually, it probably his best game in the NFL was against the Dolphins last year.
I was going to say it's a little disingenuous because of the rushing, but the passing stats are worse than Jamarcus
Russell. And yet another Dolphin connection. Omar, you were aware who the Broncos DC is? Our good friend Vance Joseph.
Oh, Vance, the truth serum.
So how would you think he's going to try to deal with that crazy speed that the Dolphins have on offense? And looks like Ben has frozen. Does he have the same internet provider you do, Omar? What's the deal with that?
Oh, come on. Don't be disrespectful. I fixed my issues. I fixed my internet issues.
Ben is back.
There we go.
Ben, do you have the same internet provider as Omar?
I don't know where he went.
So my question to you is, how would you think that Vance Joseph is going to deal with that crazy speed outside?
It's interesting because Vance is running a variant of Vic's scheme. What Vance normally does is the opposite of Vic. He comes from the Wade Phillips school. And so what he likes to do is single high and send a lot of pressure. And that's not what they're doing right now. They're still running a lot of what Vic had done. And it has not been good results over the first 2 weeks on a per drive basis. This defense, which is probably top 5 in talent, has not looked like a top half of the league defense. I bet that they go too high most of the game. Defending the Dolphins, the formula is you go too high and cross your fingers, right? So it's, I think that's kind of where you're at. I don't see a lot of blitzing. I do think it'll be closer to what Vic does in terms of, giving up the flats, keep the play in front of you, that kind of stuff. We'll see. Maybe they haven't come to Jesus because right now the fan base is very upset with what Vance has done so far. They weren't real high on Vance because of his tenure here as a head coach after being the DC of the Dolphins. So that's sort of been a thing. I think there's going to be some changes made, and we've all seen, Sean Payton's buddy Rex Ryan on TV dropping the quotes on Vance yesterday. So, yeah, who by the way interviewed for this DC job and probably will be the DC next year. But it's tough. I mean, you guys know the talent you have. You got even with Jalen Waddle banged up, you still got Tyreek Hill, and that's a problem. That's a nightmare by itself. The fact that you got other speed on the outside and and Mostert and all that. It's just the name of the game is speed. And Mike McDaniel, I've known him since he was in high school and he was dancing at Michelle Latimer Dance Academy here in Denver. He's a guy that is a very what's it? Yeah, he was ballroom dancing for a year and for a couple of years at Michelle Latimer Dance Academy in Denver.
Oh, thank you, Ben.
You're welcome for that one.
Very nice.
I was thinking you were to like hip hop dancing, which I could see.
He did some of that too. Stuff too. Yeah, they have all kinds of dancers. You should ask him about that. So,
we will.
But anyway, Mike's one of the smartest guys I know, and I'm glad that his personal demons are behind him because he's really thriving now, and I love what he's done down there in Miami. I always kind of casually check the Miami score just to see how he's doing, and that's one of those things. It's so much speed on that team. I don't think the Broncos have had the speed to keep up with it. I think you blow us out, and I think that you guys are going to get real familiar with the name Damari Mathis as you see the back of his jersey chasing somebody down that they throw the ball to.
So I guess who Miami will be attacking. Yeah, okay. Yeah. They're what I do find interesting is that there's supposedly a matchup. The game plan is catered to the opponent's weaknesses, sort of following through with the Bill Belichick's strategy of attacking teams.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, Damari Mathis is the weakest corner and the weakest link on this team. Obviously, Caden Stearns went down for the season. He was the other safety opposite Justin Simmons. Kareem Jackson stepped into that role, but thanks to two, I don't want to use the word dirty, but I'm not using
Oh
it.
no, okay, well, I'll use it. I'll use it for you, Ben. Dirty,
Okay.
cheap. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the one against Jacoby Myers, the receiver was slipping. I could excuse that. The one against Washington and Logan Thomas was completely uncalled for. He may not even be available. He might get suspended for this game. He was ejected in that one, so that puts a problem out there. So the safety opposite Justin Simmons is going to be a problem. Probably will be De'Laren Turner-Yell. And then the corner position. I mean, Surtain is top 5 in the league, and he may be top 1 depending on who you ask. But in the slot corner, Sang Bassi is very, very good. But the other corner, Damari Mathis, has been getting shelled 2 straight weeks, and it's going to be interesting to see if he can step up.
Yeah, from what I saw, apparently he will not be suspended. He may get fined, but apparently he's going to avoid a suspension. But that was egregious to me. That hit on Logan Thomas was bad. On offense, obviously, I'm guessing the main guys who the Dolphins should concern themselves with would be Javonte Williams and Jerry Jeudy. Anybody else? No.
I would. Judy's still coming back off that hamstring. He's been kind of the dummy route guy. I would suggest Javonte, yes, and Samaje Perine, the backup running back. They both get about equal carries and catches, and they'll get targeted a lot in the passing game. Troutman's not really much of a threat. He's there, and if he gets open, they'll throw him the ball at tight end. But that's all you have to worry about with Dulcich on the IR. As a receiver, Cortland Sutton's a possession guy. Jerry's should be the speed guy, but he's been hurt. Marvin Mims really kind of had a statement game as a rookie last week. We're going to see if he can continue that momentum. He's the other guy to keep an eye on. And then, a sleeper is Brandon Johnson. He's a big body guy who's a little faster than you think he is. And he'll get some catches. He was the recipient of the Hail Mary catch, by the way. As far as anybody else goes, I mean, the offensive line, the strength is the guards. Quinn Meinertz and Ben Powers are the absolute strength of that line. They're the best players there. Cushenberry's serviceable, but lacks functional strength at times. And then I think everybody's familiar with Garrett Bowles, and what he does on the left side, and Mike McClinchy on the other side.
That ship has sailed, but since his name was brought up, and I actually reached out to you to ask you about him back when, there were a lot of Dolphin fans who, for most of the summer, when there were question marks along the offensive line, were like, we need to sign Dalton Risner. We need to sign Dalton Risner. Tell me why
it would be a bad idea right now.
But tell me why it was a good move that they didn't.
You go back and you look at Dalton Risner's tape last year, and you see a lot of Dalton Risner on the ground. And that's a problem. He's at his best in that zone scheme, and they'll use him in Minnesota. He probably could have been a starter in Miami, but there's a couple of different reasons that he wasn't signed until he was now. Part of it was being the veteran, the guaranteed money. Now that it's week 3, obviously that's part of it, but part of it was the shove. You can't be there in prime time, not picking your quarterback up because you're frustrated with him. The backup quarterback comes to talk to you about it, and you shove him, and it gets caught on camera, and there's a fight, on the sideline on camera, and that happened, and there were people that shied away from him because of that. I will tell you this about Dalton: he's a good human being. I talked about that show and going out to Buffalo Wild Wings, doing all that stuff. He came out once, and this is the only time I ever saw this. After his time was up, instead of leaving, pocketing his appearance fee and going, he went to every single table in the restaurant, shook everybody's hand, made sure that every single person there got any picture, autograph, whatever they wanted, thanked them for coming out, and then left. And so I'll say this: whatever he is as a player, he's a Hall of Fame human being when it comes to that kind of stuff.
That's strong. That is strong. Omar, anything else? We're going to wrap this up.
No.
Anything else?
I'm pretty much good. I thank you. This was probably the most thorough and extensive breakdown that sort of helps you create a game plan. And that's really what the point of Behind Enemy Lines is you figure out what the strengths and the weaknesses are. Any weakness for Russell you see so far? Is his arm can he still throw deep?
Oh, he's still got the deep ball. It's still there. The athleticism has lost a step. I mean, he can still move, but he's lost a step. The deep ball's still there. I would say the main thing is force him to throw it inside, force him to throw it between the numbers, and it's a lot. You're going to be a lot better off. Right now, the only thing he's really doing when it comes to that is taking the running back on those choice routes over the middle. Everything else, and Sean Payton's offense is predicated on the 11 to 19 yard game over the middle. He's not really taking that. He's either going outside or going short to the backs.
One thing, and I don't know, maybe it's just me, who's a grumpy old dude who looks for something to bitch about all the time, but the game against Washington looked to me like it turned on the fumble in the second quarter when the Broncos were up, and it looked to me like Russell either wasn't aware he'd lost the ball or decided, yeah, I'm not going to go for that loose ball. Was that Did that come up? Did anybody make an issue of it? And did I see something that wasn't there, or what?
Per him, he didn't see it. He just didn't see it right there. So, and even though he was, yeah, I know. So, one of those things, like I'll take him at his word, even though I'm kind of side eyeing it a little bit. But per him, he didn't see it. This wasn't like Teddy Bridgewater not tackling somebody after throwing the pick, but it was one of those things where you kind of side eye it, like, bro, you should have had that one.
Holy moly! It was like, to me, it's like Russell the ball. You can make an effort. And by the way, I'm sorry, you just mentioned Teddy not tackling somebody after a pick. That was during Denver time, because last year
Eagles game.
Well, because last year he broke his finger in week 17 against New England because he decided to get involved on a pick 6 return while he was standing at the goal line where, dude, you're not stopping the guy at that point anyway. So
probably overcorrection for what happened in Denver.
Yeah, I guess he heard about it and was like, no, I'm gonna toughen up and I'm gonna get involved here, but not smart.
Yeah, the fans were merciless on that. He kind of olayed as I think Darius Slay rolled by him. He like jumped out of the way and didn't touch him, and it was they were merciless for a couple of weeks.
Well, Dan Marino used to do that, not get involved after he threw a pick. But then again, I know Dan Marino. Dan Marino's a friend of mine, and Teddy Bridgewater is no Dan Marino.
Agreed.
Teddy Bridgewater disrespect must stop. Anyway.
We like Teddy, but are we going to argue that?
Listen, Teddy is the best quarterback that South Florida has produced, with the exception of
Geno Smith,
Jackson,
Lamar,
Lamar. But we can't really count Lamar because he's so far up north.
Yeah. I'll say this. I love Teddy Bridgewater, the person. I do. As much as I'm making fun of him right now, I love Teddy Bridgewater. He's a class act human being. It was a class act about everything. The bane of my existence, having played in my short high school career, the quarterback position is people who throw short of the sticks every time on third down. It just makes me grind my teeth.
We used to have a head coach who used to love wide receiver screens on 3rd and 9. Am I right, Omar?
Which one is that? Philbin?
Adam Gase, come on, dude.
I'm very familiar with Adam Gase. He was here in Denver. I knew who you were talking about the minute you said it.
Man. Cool, dude. You remember that? Oh my God, Omar. Oh my Lord, he used to throw that all the time.
I've like Men in Black brainwashed myself from the Adam Gase era.
Oh, okay.
Hey, he did make the playoffs. It did make the playoffs in 2016 with the Unicorns as the offensive line, but everything else was pretty much a train wreck, as it has been for the last 20 years. But at least now with Mike McDaniel, we got to come up with like a dancing name for him. So he did hip hop and ballroom. What is going on here?
Ballroom Mike? Is that too?
You guys got to go back and ask him. Just call him Dancing Mike McDaniel. See what happens.
Oh, that's funny. So Dolphin fans, the Dolphins are going to be 3-0 because Ben has just guaranteed it's going to be not only a Dolphins win, it's going to be a Dolphins blowout. You're on record.
Multi-score win. I'll call it that. Multi-score Dolphins win.
And it's interesting because I mentioned to Omar yesterday, my biggest concern in this game is the looking ahead factor because they got the Buffalo Bills at Highmark Stadium next week after 2 nice wins on the road.
Yeah, I think Sean Payton will have something special for Miami. I don't think it's going to be a big blowout game, especially if Jalen Waddle doesn't play.
Well, that would be a concern. But if everybody's playing, it's going to be tough. I just, like I said, there's just too much speed, and I'm not sure this defense can keep up with that much speed.
Okay. Well, Ben, how can everybody find your work?
If you're a big fan of dumpster fires, I'm on Twitter. You can unfollow me at Albright NFL. Other than that, obviously we got the radio show. It's everywhere, and you can find it at BroncosCountryNight.com or 8:50 a.m. on your AM dial. About 90% of the country.
Excellent. Ben, that was absolutely fabulous stuff. Truly appreciate you jumping on and enlightening us. We're going to wrap it up. You can find us on YouTube, alldolphins.com. Subscribe, like, share, download, tell your friends. We're on the Fans First Sports Network under Miami Dolphins Insider, where you get your audio podcasts. Tomorrow is the first day of the prep week with the injury report. And then we'll tell you all we know about what's going on with Jalen Waddle, Teron Armstead, and Jalen Phillips. Until then, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.